Welcome back, everyone. Ready to dive into a world that might seem a little, well, intimidating at first. We're tackling government contracts today.
Oh, yeah, it's a topic that can definitely feel like a bit of a maze, right? With all those regulations and acronyms and procedures.
Exactly. But don't worry, we're here to break it down. We're using Michael Price's book, Demystifying Government Contracts, as our guide. It's a fantastic resource, by the way.
Absolutely, and it's really going to help us uncover the amazing opportunities that are out there hidden within this whole world of government contracting. Because let's face it, the U.S. government is the biggest buyer in the world.
Oh, for sure. The book really emphasizes the sheer scale of it all. It's mind-boggling, really. We're talking billions, trillions of dollars flowing through this marketplace. Everything from like basic office supplies to, you know, cutting-edge technology.
Right, they need it all.
Yeah,
So how does it actually work? How does the government make sure everyone has a fair shot at getting a piece of the pie?
that's the key, right? Fairness and transparency.
Absolutely. And that's where the FIR comes in the Federal Acquisition Regulation. It's essentially the rule book that governs the entire process, lays out the ground rules for how businesses can interact with the government.
So the FIR is like our roadmap, our playbook.
Exactly. It's the guide. Though, of course, the book also mentions that some agencies have their own specific regulations, on top of the FAR.
Ah, so it's not just one giant rule book then.
Right. It can get a little more nuanced. For example, like the Department of Defense, obviously, they've got to have their own set of rules for buying, weapons systems and things like that. It's very specialized.
Makes sense given the complexity of what they're dealing with. Okay, so we've got the FAR as our foundation. But how does the government actually ensure that competition is fair?
Well, that's where the CICA comes in the Competition and Contracting Act. It's all about making sure that contracts are awarded based on merit,
Right.
who can deliver the best value for the taxpayers' money.
So it's not just about who you know or, any kind of favoritism.
Exactly. Level playing field. And it's not just about competition either. The government also actively prioritizes working with American businesses.
That's right. I was just about to bring that up, the Buy American Act, right?
Yes. And there are other policies, too, that create incentives for agencies to choose domestically produced goods and services whenever possible.
Which makes sense, right? Supporting American jobs and businesses, a win-win.
Absolutely. So we've got this massive marketplace, a commitment to fairness, a preference for American-made products. Sounds like a pretty great opportunity for businesses to grow and thrive, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. But one of the big challenges I think a lot of businesses face is just knowing where to even begin. How do you find these opportunities? It feels like searching for like a needle in a haystack.
It can feel that way for sure. That's where SAM.gov comes in. It's the government's main platform for businesses to, kind of register their interest and see what's out there.
So it's like the central hub for government contracting.
Exactly. Like a massive online directory where agencies post their needs and businesses can showcase what they offer.
And I know they've been working on like a new and improved version of SAM.gov, haven't they?
Yeah, beta.salmon.gov. They're rolling it out to modernize the system. It's supposed to be much more user-friendly.
That's great news because let's be honest, navigating government websites can sometimes be its own challenge.
But okay, so beyond SAM.gov, are there any other avenues for finding opportunities?
Definitely. Grants.gov is another one. It's a great resource for those seeking funding for, research or development projects or social programs, things like that.
Right, and it's important to distinguish, right? Grants versus contracts, they're not quite the same thing.
Exactly. Contracts are more transactional, focused on goods and services. Grants often support broader initiatives. Now, if you're looking for a faster track to government sales, there's another approach to consider: schedule contracting. It's like having a VIP pass to the marketplace.
Okay, that sounds intriguing. A VIP pass. Tell me more about these scheduled contracts. How do they work? So essentially, a scheduled contract is a pre-negotiated agreement between your business and a government agency. So they can basically bypass the whole lengthy bidding process and purchase directly from your pre-approved schedule of products or services.
Ah, I see. So it's all about cutting through the red tape and speeding things up.
Exactly. Saves time and money for both sides. It's like setting up a preferred vendor relationship with the government.
I bet that's a huge advantage for businesses, especially those providing like commonly needed goods or services.
You got it. And there are different types of scheduled contracts, too, to cater to all sorts of needs. The most common is the Multiple Award Schedule, or MAS.
Multiple award schedules. So like multiple companies can get on that schedule for similar types of products.
Yeah. If you're selling office furniture, for example, you could have a bunch of different companies on that MAS schedule, all competing for government business.
Interesting. And are there other types of schedules besides the MAS?
Oh, yeah. There's the single award schedule for like unique things, maintenance and repair schedule for ongoing services, even a new item introductory schedule for those super innovative products.
Wow, it sounds like a very well-structured system, covers a lot of bases. But how does a business actually get awarded one of these schedule contracts? What's the process?
Well, first you got to make sure you're even eligible. Right. There are specific requirements based on your business size, industry, all that good stuff. Once you're sure you meet the criteria, then it's all about crafting a killer proposal.
So just like applying to college, got to have a good application. What makes for a winning schedule contract proposal?
Well, you've got to clearly explain what you're offering, obviously. Your pricing needs to be super clear, too. And highlighting your past performance, your track record, that's key.
So building trust, showing them you can deliver.
Exactly. Then, once you submit your proposal, it goes through a pretty thorough evaluation. The government contracting officers, they go through it with a fine-tooth comb, making sure you meet their standards.
So it's not just a rubber stamp then. You can't just submit anything and expect to get approved.
Nope, they do their homework.
Yeah.
And even if your proposal is looking good, there's often a negotiation phase. Maybe the government suggests some tweaks to pricing or some terms.
So there's a little back and forth to find that sweet spot.
Exactly. And if all goes well, you get awarded that schedule contract.
Which is basically like a golden ticket to streamlining your government sales. But what if a business, for whatever reason, doesn't qualify for a schedule contract? Are they out of luck?
Not at all. That's where open market procurements come into play. It's a whole other avenue to explore, and we'll dive into that right after this.
Okay, so open market procurements. It sounds a bit like, I don't know, the Wild West of government contracting. Is it really a free-for-all out there?
Well, not exactly a free-for-all.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a different ball game compared to those schedule contracts we were talking about.
How so?
Well, in the open market, it's all about responding to specific solicitations that government agencies put out, for specific projects or needs that they have.
Ah, I see. So instead of having that pre-negotiated agreement, like with a schedule contract, you're competing for individual opportunities.
Exactly. And each opportunity is going to have like its own set of requirements.
Yeah.
And businesses need to submit proposals outlining how they can meet those needs and, at what cost.
So it's a more targeted approach.
You could say that. Now, when it comes to these solicitations, there are different types. The book talks about the IFB, the invitation for bid.
IFB, okay. And when would the government use those?
Well, they use those when, they have a really clear idea of what they need. And the focus is primarily on price.
So if they need like 10,000 reams of paper, they might issue an IFB, and it's basically whoever can offer the lowest price wins.
Pretty much, although they'll still evaluate those bids to make sure, they meet the quality standards and other requirements.
Right, of course. Now, the book mentioned there are two types of IFBs, one-step and two-step. What's the difference?
Ah, good catch. One step is pretty straightforward. You submit your bid with the pricing, and they evaluate them all at once. But the two-step, that's used when the project is more complex, and they want to look at the technical solutions first before getting into the pricing.
Oh, interesting. So it's like a qualifying round. Make sure you can actually deliver what you're proposing before talking money.
Exactly. First step, you submit those technical proposals, and then only the most promising candidates, they move on to the second step, where they submit pricing bids.
Makes sense. Now, what if the government isn't just looking for the lowest price, but something more, I don't know, innovative?
That's when they use the RFP, the request for proposal.
RFP. Okay, so what's the difference between that and the IFB?
Well, RFPs are used when the government has a specific problem they need to solve, or a goal, but they're open to different solutions.
So there's more room for creativity. You're not just bidding on a set of, like, predefined specifications.
Right. Businesses can propose unique approaches, maybe new technologies. The evaluation process is more complex, too, because they're considering, technical expertise, past performance, the overall value, not just the bottom line.
So it's where businesses can really showcase their strengths and stand out from the competition.
Exactly. A strong RFP response, it takes a deep understanding of the government's needs. You got to be able to articulate a compelling solution, not just, throw out a low price and hope for the best.
Now, you mentioned IFBs and RFPs. Are there any other types of solicitations that businesses should be aware of in this open market?
Oh, yeah. The RFQ, request for quotation.
RFQ, got it. And what are those all about?
Well, those are often used for smaller purchases Or when the government's just trying to gather some information, like, what the market pricing is for something or what technologies are out there.
So it's not necessarily about like winning a contract right away, but more about getting on their radar.
Exactly. It's all about relationship building, showcasing what you can do.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about competition, but what about small businesses? Do they actually stand a chance in this whole open market environment? It seems like it would be tough to go up against, those giant corporations.
Oh, absolutely they do. In fact, the government has programs specifically designed to support small businesses.
Really? Like what?
Well, they have something called set-asides. It's where a certain percentage of contracts are actually reserved for specific categories of businesses, like, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, disadvantaged businesses.
Ah, so it's not always a David and Goliath situation then.
Not at all. The government really recognizes the value and the innovation that small businesses bring to the table. They're actively trying to encourage their participation.
That's great to hear. Makes the whole thing seem a lot less intimidating. So, okay, let's say a business, whether big or small, they successfully navigate this open market, they win a contract, what happens next? What does the actual execution phase look like?
Well, winning the contract, that's just the first step. The real work begins with contract administration. And this is where, a lot of businesses can really stumble if they're not prepared.
Okay, so what are the crucial elements of like successful contract administration? What do businesses need to focus on to make sure things go smoothly?
The book really stresses the importance of meticulous record keeping. Everything needs to be documented. Financial transactions, deliverables, every communication related to the contract.
So it's all about staying organized, having a system in place to track everything.
Absolutely. And it's important for a few reasons. For one, the government can audit contracts for a certain period of time, even after they're completed. So having everything in order can make that process much less painful.
Ah, so it's kind of like an insurance policy, just in case any questions come up later on.
Exactly. And beyond audits, good record keeping just helps you manage the project effectively. You can track progress, make sure you're meeting your obligations.
Right. So what else is crucial during this contract administration phase?
Well, making sure you get paid on time is pretty important, wouldn't you say?
I'd say so.
And this means understanding those payment terms.
Yeah.
Those are outlined in the contract. And they can vary depending on the project, the agency. Sometimes there are upfront payments, sometimes it's milestone-based, sometimes it's a cost reimbursement model.
Do you got to be aware of the different structures and make sure your invoicing and tracking systems are all aligned?
Precisely. And then there's the whole world of contract modifications. Because in the real world, things don't always go exactly according to plan.
Oh, for sure. Things change, unexpected things happen. So how do you handle those changes? Is it as easy as just making a few edits to the original agreement?
Not quite. Contract modifications have to be handled through a formal process. Written requests, approvals, amendments. It's important to understand how those procedures work and keep that communication flowing with your contracting officer.
So flexibility and clear communication are key. Are there any specific clauses or terms within contracts that businesses should be like extra careful about?
The book talks about one that often catches businesses off guard. It's the most favored customer clause.
Most favored customer. What does that mean?
It means that if you offer a discount or better terms to any other customer during the life of your government contract, you're obligated to offer those same benefits to the government.
Ah, so you can't play favorites even if Uncle Sam isn't your biggest client.
Exactly. It's all about ensuring that the government is getting the best possible deal.
I can see how that could really impact a business's pricing strategy. So it's a good reminder to read those contracts carefully, understand all the fine print.
Absolutely. Now, we've talked about the excitement of winning a contract, the demands of managing it, but there's one final stage in this journey that many businesses kind of dread: government audits.
Ah, yes, the dreaded audits. What do businesses need to know about this part of the process? What should they expect?
Yeah, audits, they can definitely make people nervous.
Right.
It's understandable. But, throughout our deep dive here, we've been using Michael Price's book as a guide.
Demystifying Government Contracts.
That's the one. And it really emphasizes that knowledge is power. The more you understand about how these audits work, what the government's looking for, the better prepared you'll be.
Makes sense. So let's demystify the process a little bit. Give our listeners some of the basics. What should they know going in?
Well, first things first, the government has a specific window of time to actually audit a contract.
Oh, okay. How long is that?
Typically, it's 3 years
3 years.
from either the completion date or when that final payment's made, whichever comes later.
Ah, I see. So even if you've like finished the project, moved on, you could still be audited.
That's right. You got to keep those records handy. And, it's not always predictable either. Sometimes they're random, just part of the process. But sometimes there's a specific concern, a red flag that pops up.
Like what?
Oh, maybe there's a discrepancy in the financial records. Or maybe there's some suspicion of, non-compliance with the terms of the contract.
Ah, so they might take a closer look if something seems off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when they do, they have the right to look at all those financial records tied to that contract.
Okay, so transparency is key, right? Got to have everything documented. Now, are all audits like created equal, or are there different types?
That's a great question. The book actually makes a distinction between audits for schedule contracts and those for open market procurements.
Oh, right. Because those are two very different beasts, as we've learned.
Exactly. Different focus, different criteria. So let's start with those schedule contracts. What are they typically looking at there?
Yeah, what are the auditors zeroing in on?
Well, for schedule contracts, it's often about those pricing regulations, making sure everything's on the up and up, and also compliance with the industrial funding fee.
Okay, the industrial funding fee. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but can you refresh our memory?
Of course. So it's basically a small percentage that businesses with those schedule contracts, they pay back to the government.
Right.
Helps cover the administrative costs of the program.
So it's like a membership fee, for the convenience of having that pre-negotiated agreement and that streamlined sales process.
Exactly. And auditors will be checking to make sure businesses are calculating and paying that fee correctly.
Makes sense. Got to make sure everybody's playing by the rules. Now, what about audits for those open market procurements?
Well, those tend to go a little deeper, especially with the cost reimbursement contracts.
Okay.
They really dig into the actual expenses, making sure they match up with what was in the proposal.
So they're checking those receipts, making sure everything lines up.
That's it. They're looking for any inconsistencies, anything that might suggest overcharging or improper use of those government funds.
Transparency is everything, right? Whether it's a scheduled contract or an open market procurement. Got to have that paper trail. Now, knowing all this, what can businesses actually do to prepare?
Well, we keep coming back to it, but that meticulous record keeping is absolutely essential.
Right. No more shoe boxes full of receipts.
Exactly. A clear, organized system. Track those financial transactions, communications, deliverables, everything, and make sure it's all accurate and complete.
Because any gaps or errors, those can really raise a red flag.
For sure. The book also emphasizes proactive communication with your contracting officer.
Ah, keeping that dialogue open.
Yeah. Check in regularly, address any questions or concerns, keep them in the loop. It really builds trust and can help avoid problems down the road.
So it's not just about, dotting your I's and crossing your T's. It's about building a strong working relationship.
Absolutely. And if there's ever any doubt, bring in an expert, someone who specializes in government contracting, an accountant, a lawyer. They can provide guidance.
Right. Have someone in your corner who really knows the ropes.
Exactly. Because it's a complex world, and having the right support can make all the difference. So we've really gone deep here, haven't we? Explored all these different aspects of government contracting.
We have. Different types of contracts, the regulations, the opportunities, the challenges, and yeah, even those audits.
But at the end of the day, it can be incredibly rewarding.
Absolutely. Not just about winning a contract, but about becoming a partner, contributing to something bigger than yourself.
Exactly. And it all starts with taking that first step, learning, understanding, and then taking action. So to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep learning, and don't be afraid to ask for help along the way.
And remember, Michael Price's book, Demystifying Government Contracts, that's a fantastic resource full of practical advice and insights.
So whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, there's always something new to learn, new opportunities to discover.
Keep those proposals sharp, those records organized, and those communication lines open. You might just be the next government contracting success story.
Until next time, happy contracting.